Just to begin now, we want to do just a short opening prayer from the Course. I give you to the Holy Spirit as part of myself. I know that you will be released unless I want to use you to imprison myself. In the name of my freedom, I choose your release because I recognize that we will be released together. Judy and Tam, please.
That prayer was for all relationships because everyone is in a relationship with certainly one or many, many people. And when we join together in the practice of A Course in Miracles, we know we can be released from the prison we've made of separation. Since tonight is a mother and a daughter's journey through A Course in Miracles, I'll just start a few moments by saying the beginning of my life with my daughter validated, and a little child shall lead them. A little child will lead you. Now, not everyone has a little child to lead them, but maybe you have the little child within. However, my daughter was born, my second child, my son Jonathan was first, and she came along with a sense of knowing. All I can describe it was as beyond what I would say the five senses can designate to us about the world we live in. And she seemed to go further. She wasn't trained at this. I don't think she knew that everyone wasn't available in this way to this, but she did start answering questions I hadn't yet vocalized. So in the beginning, it was just very, very calm and quiet. If I wanted to know what I should feed my son and his friends when they came home from kindergarten, I'd hear her little voice say, "Not tuna fish, Mommy, I hates it." And when I asked her why she said that, she says, "You asked me." Well, of course, I hadn't out loud. And it happened enough for me to know that she had an extended ability to listen. She was listening to my inner voice, not just to my spoken words. At that same time, as she developed, it was interesting for me to note that she had an inbuilt moral sense. And what I mean by that is she sort of knew not to hurt people. And she was very, very willing to help her little friends when they had problems. And I would often hear her talking to them as if she was a child counselor. But one day particularly, I was passing by her room and I heard speaking, her voice. And I hoped that she would be sleeping already. It was quite late, but I crept in to see what was going on behind my back. And what I saw was my little girl in bed, sitting up and talking to someone. And she was talking as if she was having a conversation. And I said to her, "Who are you talking to, honey?" And she, "My friend." And I said, "Is your friend a little elf?" And she said, "No, Mommy." I said, "Is your friend as big as you are?" "No, Mommy, much bigger." "Is your friend as big as I am?" "No, Mommy, my friend is bigger than this room. My friend is bigger than the world. My friend is bigger than this whole wide world. And I can talk to my friend." And I said, "Does your friend talk to you?" "Oh, yes." So I just backed out of the room and closed the door because somehow or other I knew that whatever it was, whatever conversation she was having with a friend, that at this point I was not involved. As she got a little bit older, there were more incidences that happened very often, and they fascinated me. Not her, she wasn't much interested, but they fascinated me a lot. So I went back to school and I took courses in experimental parapsychology. So much so that I eventually began to teach it at New York University. So it became my career, my life's work, and that little child sort of brought me in. Now, as this was going on, I was also doing a lot of reading. And the reading was showing me that some of the abilities that Tam was evincing certainly were what I would call in the paranormal field. And every bit of reading that I did pointed in the direction of our higher selves, of God. And so I think that I was kind of prepared, maybe even more than prepared, to receive the course in 1975. Actually, May 29th, it's a few days from now, it'll be 44 years, and bring it home and present it to my family in a way that was a story of how excited I was to meet two amazing people and the job they did, and they didn't seem to be much interested, but it was there, it was in the house. My son was then in college, and he came home with his friend to Christmas vacation, and he had looked at me sitting at the table. I had all the papers. I was collating the first printed edition, and he just went into his room, but his friend stayed and started to look at the material, and something clicked in his friend. I will leave that for another time and another story, because the friend of 19 years old was Bob Rosenthal. We go back a long time, this family, even though I am 88 and my daughter is only just 60, and Bob is 63, we've had the same introduction to the course at the same time, all of us in totally different ways. So it's not as if I was teaching my daughter anything. I was trying to learn how to practice to be more of what she was. Now she'll refute everything I have to say.
Well, I would like to say that I've heard all the stories about the things that my mother remembered that I did as a little girl. And I do remember not necessarily all the stories that she tells, but I remember the reactions that she had, which were very loving, but also I couldn't understand why they were reactions at all. And I particularly remember something that happened with a slinky, where I wrapped a slinky around my leg. I was 3 years old, and I wrapped it around my leg, and I went into my mother, and I told her very deliberately that my brother had done this. And for whatever reason, she knew that I was not telling the truth, and she put me in my room. And I have such a vivid memory of that moment of crying because I was being punished, but hearing an incredibly loud inner voice say to me, remember this, you are 3 years old and this is the first time you ever lied. And that's what they do here. And there was this feeling of, what does that mean? But there was also a feeling of that just this moment, I separated myself from actually the truth that I was living before then. And in one little way, I started to become kind of ego conscious at that moment. And realizing that everything that we were saying kind of took away from truth. And how to walk that line in integrity became something of interest to me. And so as my mother started to study parapsychology and the psychic, I couldn't understand why all these scientists were doing experiments on or with me to prove something that seemed to just exist, and why they needed to prove this, I could not understand. But my mother made it fun for me, and until it started to get less fun, until they started to put needles in my head, and I was asked to be in the role of the exorcist, which didn't feel very comfortable, and all sorts of different crazy experiences. But for me, the psychic and all the interest in the psychic was silly, because it didn't feel like it had much to do with truth and love and the heart. And it felt like it had as much to do with that, I should say, as breathing. That it wasn't something separate, or then smelling. It was just a part of being in a connected state of knowing certain things. And the way in which, for me, I really felt that my intuitive abilities were expressed was mostly that I could see, like an architect sees cracks in a foundation, and where a building is faulty, I could intuitively see where people blocked their own ability to love. And sometimes they were in details of why that person, or their psychological history of why that person might have done that. But that was where I was more interested as I grew older in any psychic ability. So when my mother came home and she said that she was given this manuscript and what it meant to her, I remember that day very well, because her feeling, I intuited her feeling. That was the feeling that this is what she had been waiting for and looking for her next step. And I was 16 at the time, and I was thrilled because that meant I wasn't going to be in experiments anymore, first of all, and also that we were in a parallel step of connecting more with love than the paranormal. And to me, the paranormal was just normal. So I will pass it on to you, Mom, for your next part of history, her story.
The paranormal was normal, was something I realized as we went along with our studies of A Course in Miracles. And I'm talking about the we. It would be Helen Schuckman and Bill Thetford Scribes and Dr. Kenneth Wapnick. As I was absorbed into their group of three and became a group of four, I started to feel that I was indeed on my own journey home, that I'd had childhood experiences, which I remembered, of being in what we might call a transcendental field of forever, mystical experiences which didn't take place in the mind on this earth, but rather were expanded, and one was able to be at one with the universe and with everything and everyone in it. So as these non-paranormal experiences were occurring, I could have a different framework for them and let them happen to me too, and therefore feel as if we are indeed much more than we seem to be, and that our state of awareness or consciousness is the expanded one, is where our true world life is, beyond the world, and all of that started to make sense. In making sense, I was still a mother, and I was still working. I was still a wife and a homemaker, and so I had a very busy life indeed, and we got direction that we were indeed to share this document with many, and we decided to go ahead after being interviewed by quite a few different professional publishers, that we would publish it ourselves. And then you can say the heat was on, because we then have a very specific project to do, not just sitting around with each other and meditating and reading the course and doing the lessons. At that point, my daughter went off to college, and so she was not in the house with me anymore, which doesn't mean that we weren't very closely connected.
Wait. 1 second.
Uh-oh, okay.
Before I went to college, my mother was embracing the course and its principles and practicing the course in our home. And for me, I really delighted in being a teenager, and that this was her way and not my way. And I would really be a teenager and goad her into getting upset about something. And the moment she started to get upset about something, I would immediately say, "You're not practicing the course." And we had a few incidents of that I was watching her, and it was like I was testing her to see if this material was just another fad or another experiment, or if it was really sinking in. And
I would say goading me.
I think I said goading. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was goading. But I was myself not interested in the course, because I was a teenager going on my own path, and we had Helen and Ken and Bill coming to the apartment and all the discussions about the course. So much so that when I went to college, I became a comparative religion major, and I wrote a paper, a 50-page paper on the course without ever having read it at that point. So it was in my world very much every day for the last couple of years that I was at home. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. I should go back. You'll excuse me if I go back, because it made me think of something that was really important. When you were about 10, I had started a new business with a person who was an artist, and we also had a showroom in New York City. And one day I was in the showroom because the person who managed the showroom was out sick. And I happened to look through the books of our organization, of our corporation, and find out that this partner of mine had been not sending in withholding taxes that we kept out of people's salaries for 3 years. And I was beyond crazed. I could not believe that we were doing something so illegal, and I never knew about it. Not that if I knew about it, there would have been taxes paid, but I didn't know about it. And I came home, and I was so angry, and I was making dinner for my children and my husband, and I was throwing it on the table. And at one point, Tam said to me, "Mom, why don't you eat your dinner?" And I said, "I'm so angry at what my partner did. I want to squish his neck. I want to do something to him. I'm furious." And she said, "Does he know you're angry?" And I said, "No, I haven't spoken to him yet." She said, "I bet he's eating his dinner." So I could say that was a little bit pre-course for me without ever having received the course. And to think that my child was telling me that if I changed my mind, I could eat my dinner was a very big step, and it stuck in me. And I just thought of it now. Okay, going back to the days of the course. Tam was leading her life, and she and I were asked to be in a conference in Hawaii on A Course in Miracles at Unity Church there, and a lot of people coming. I forgot how many, but it might have been the largest convening of people from the course all over the world, because who doesn't want to go to Hawaii? And Tam was allowed to bring her significant other, and I was asked whether she would be helpful with the children who were going to be there on vacation and sort of give them things to do, games and whatever way she wanted to entertain them. And she had said, yes, she would do that. But also, when they found out, which they didn't know in the beginning, that we were mother and daughter, they decided it might be a good idea to ask us to talk about A Course in Miracles, very much like we're talking right now. And a little bit nerve-wracking for me, because Tam is off the wall. I never know what she was going to say. And I went off the wall, over the top. I wanted to write out something that we would follow. And she kept saying, no, Mom, we're just going to go out there and show people how we love each other. Now, that was so obviously true. How could I even arrange anything to say? So I said, fine. And we went out. I don't even remember what we said. But as I said, it was a large number of people. And someone at the end of the questioning time asked him, do you study A Course in Miracles? And she said, no. And the person who asked us says, why not? She's good. My mother does. That was enough. It made everybody laugh so hard. But it was very true. I think she had to have her own way. She had to do her studies, comparative religion. She had to move to Nepal for a year and live there.
Wait, that's my story.
You had what?
It's my story.
Oh, excuse me. Take it back. You didn't hear this. Go ahead.
No, I want to add that in the talks we gave, it wasn't as clean cut as that it was her way, but it was a lot that I had my own inner listening that she never squelched in me. I mean, a lot of parents do squelch it in their children, and my inner listening was a different path. And in that too, as a child, and in the beginning of the studying of the course, there were things that I saw that I would say newbies coming in didn't sit well with me. Like they would say, someone would do something that I thought was unkind to someone else, and this the person who had the unkindness done would say, you just did something and that hurt me. And then the other person who had done what I thought was the hurt would say, well, that's just your perception, because I can't hurt you. That's your perception. And something didn't feel quite right in that to me. All the way brought up to my mother and I were each speaking at a conference. I think it was at Carleton College. And I was speaking about teaching blind children how to sense color. My mother was speaking about the course. And she didn't teach the course. She was speaking about the course. And I went to one of her talks, and she got up to the podium and started to speak. And when she would speak like that, she just would completely get out of her own way, and spirit would come through, and she'd give a very beautiful talk. But at the end of it, people at that point, the course was in 3 volumes, hardcover volumes, of the teacher's manual, the text, and the workbook lessons. And if someone dropped it, people like had to pick it up and kiss it like it was the Bible. And I was watching my mother give this talk, and at the end of the talk, people came up to me and were crying and said, oh, can I touch you? You're related to your mother, to that woman up there. And I was actually disgusted. And I felt like there was a lot of people who Bill Thetford termed as bliss ninnies, who were deep and spiritual and looking up like this and not actually being real of what I perceived as real, and understanding what I had heard the principles of the course be on a different level. And so I went to my mother, and I really gave her hell. And I said, I can't believe you're perpetuating this, that here it's a self-taught course. You're up there as a guru. People are thinking that you're a saint. And, you don't disavow them of this notion. You don't tell them that you're a human being, that you have sex, that you go to the bathroom, that you get so tired after some of these conferences, you don't even want to see anyone anymore and just can't wait to get home. And you just project this sainthood image. And she said to me, come to my talk later this afternoon. And I said, no. And she said, just come. And begrudgingly, I showed up at her talk, and she walked up to the podium, and it was taller than she, and usually have to readjust the mic and put it down. She took the 3 volumes of the course, and she threw them on the floor, and people gasped. And she stood on them, and she gave this incredibly real, beautiful talk saying, it is not these books, it's not this body, it's not what's in here. And she word for word reiterated, this person has a hard time here in so many ways. I go to the bathroom, I'm a human being. I don't know that she said she had sex, but whatever, in that she really did lay this out, and she continued to give this absolutely beautiful talk in a very real way about even how this course came to be through 2 people who had an untenable relationship. And what it's about is the commitment to love and forgiveness. And I was so proud of her. And at the end, people were crying and applauding, and they came up to me and they said, oh, can I touch you? You're related to her. And it was a profound lesson for me that I got to have for the rest of my life, about how I was not to judge who came, who saw, what people are going to project, whatever they want to project or need to at that moment. And it is not my place to do that. And what I saw my mother doing is just the job that she was told to do. And it was a really lovely turning point between us, but still the course was not going to be my way. But I felt more comfortable watching and understanding what her way in this was. Your turn.
Well, we have different memories of the same situation.
Oh, really?
The past is over and can hurt me not. But I will say, right on, at one time we spoke together and people were applauding the two of us. Someone asked Tam something about her relationship, how we got along and everything. And she made the comment, my mother is my mother here, but my mother at home poops and farts the same as anyone else. I remember the reaction was overwhelming, and I crept out with those 3 books over my face. So I couldn't see anyone sitting there and laughing at me. But of course it was with us. And the point being that many people who start studying in the course, and Tam is absolutely right on this, get carried away by the sanctity of what they're doing. And they might forget that they are an ego, they are human beings, and this world of form is a world of lessons and trials, and that we should just be light about it, and hopefully a lot of laughter. Someone wrote in, we had a couple of questions before we began, and it was a question that I just don't want to have lost in perhaps our recollections. And this question had to do, and I don't have it in front of me to quote exactly, somebody out there wants to know how to be with her or his child in a way that would get them involved and talk to them. How do they speak to the child at an early age about A Course in Miracles? And that touched me tremendously, because years ago, way before A Course in Miracles entered my life, when I was very interested in people who had great psychic abilities, I went to see the great psychic Eileen Garrett. And although she was very old at the time, and she actually died 3 weeks after I met her, she agreed to sit with me for a few moments, but not for a reading, she told me. She said, I have something to tell you. Now, she didn't know who I was. I just introduced my name when I met her. There was no former ability to research. There was no computers then. There was no Wikipedia. And she said to me, I want to tell you something. You have a little girl, and you have to treat her very carefully. And I said, what do I have to do? And she said, my life was ruined because scientists got at me first, and they put me in a niche of talking to dead people. And that's not what I wanted to do. I would much rather have been in the scientific community and be working along with them to find out what the limit, if whether any of my abilities were. Don't let that happen to your daughter. So she was giving me very specific information about a very young child, way beyond what anything I could imagine or ask for. So I said to her, what is my role with her? And she said, love her. At the moment, I didn't gest it, but it's been in my mind for years. Every time I think I am making a mistake, or I shouldn't say this or that, I remember my job is to love her. And isn't that the job of all of us, with our children, with everyone? So hearing what Tam says, how she didn't necessarily respect or was drawn to A Course in Miracles at the beginning, I think we stayed bound together through this love. Certainly she was a loving individual herself from the time she was born. But for me to overcome a lot of my inclinations to teach or to introduce her to the Course, it wasn't my role. And I think many people who are here tonight, it probably isn't your role either. Demonstrate the Course, absolutely. Teaching them, something different. Think about it though. Maybe your job only is to love her or him.
There was a story that you wanted to tell about when you were telling me about the Course. Another.
One day we were driving in the car and Tam was sitting in the back seat, and she said to me, is it true that one holy, healed teacher of God who absolutely knew God can instantly change the world? And I said, that's what it says. And she said, is that likely to happen soon? And I said, unfortunately, I don't think so. She said, oh, good, I'm having such a good time here. So I think a lot of kids would think that, Not that the course would be too heavy, because if you're demonstrating it, they're only going to be happy.
Well, I don't know your chronological order that you want to do.
I'm way off that. I gave it up.
Yeah, because I got given you, there is, that saying in AA, I believe it is, where if you keep going to the same situation again and again, expecting a new response, that is the definition of insanity. I may be misquoting it, but that's the feeling of it. And after all these years, yet again, my mother tried to give me an agenda for this talk. And all I said to her is, I'm not going to look at it. I'm just showing up and loving. So I'm not really sure of the agenda. But I can say, because I know that there's a part of this discuss that includes the people tuning in, that I would like to say how I did get into the position where I'm in. Is that okay, Mom, or did you need to fill in some chronology? Okay, so my path was not specifically A Course in Miracles, but when the Foundation for Inner Peace came into being and the course was published, I was always part of the family business. I sat with Bob Scutch and my mother, and we put stamps on envelopes and sent out the course, and it was just a little family business that was very sweet. And I stepped in and out of watching where it was going. And then I was a freelance writer in my own career. And within that, I stayed involved with the foundation and doing work for the foundation, special projects, particularly for the foundation, particularly because I needed health insurance. And it was very, a very practical way to continue working and also be a freelance writer. But in that, I kept showing up or being within the world of the course at different important turning points, as my mother can convey what those were. You want to tell some of those, Mom? And then I'll continue. Wait, you're muted. Are you muted?
No.
Okay.
I hope I'm not muted.
Okay. Like the Rosa Maria and the explain those little parts.
Yeah, there's just so much, it's hard for me to choose. I see the panoply of our lives flashing, and I want to say stop on this one, stop on that one. Tam was always involved in the foundation's goings on. First of all, she was very close to Helen. Helen recognized her as soon as she met her. Helen's husband, Louis, Tam was the granddaughter they never had. Bill and Tam were very, very close. Ken not as much, because he was more removed and doing what he did in the teaching. But so she was always present. She was part of the continuation of our group without us even thinking of this. And when I asked her at particular times to help me with particular projects, I knew if I gave them to her as an assignment, it would be done beautifully and completely. And I think Helen and Louis and Bill knew that too, because one day, not long after Helen had died, Louis asked Tam, that's Helen's husband, Louis, asked Tam, would she, Ken's book, Absence from Felicity, had just come out. And Louis asked Tam, would she please go around? He would give her the names of all the people who knew Helen really well for many, many years, and ask them whether they had ever heard Helen mention Jesus at all, because he wanted there to be a book that would show the other side, that Helen's life may certainly have been devoted to Jesus, because she not only took down everything that he gave her to scribe in A Course in Miracles, but certainly did some deep praying, mostly with Ken, but that Helen also had another part of her that did not involve her being in any, as Louis, Helen's husband, said, religiosity at all. And so Tam, indeed, I don't know how many years, I don't remember how many years it took, went around the country to different places when she was traveling and interviewed people and wrote it up, which someday maybe will be published, And it was just that she completed this project with such love, and the people she met were so comfortable being with her that I felt reinforced. So when it came time to do a particular program, which we have, of Ken and me and Anaheim talking about our lives with Helen and Bill, and we had the raw material, I could hand it over to Tam, rather, and I knew it would be produced beautifully. It was that kind of connection that was always there until, a few years ago, maybe 5 years ago, one day, Tam told me,
Wait.
oh, am I rushing ahead?
Yeah, just, including the Rosa Maria incident.
I think you tell that.
No, you tell that.
I think I forgot it.
Yeah, you can tell the background to it. I can only say that the one thing I learned to never do in our apartment and in my mother's home in Tiburon was to answer the telephone. If you answered the telephone, there weren't answering machines back then. One, such as myself, could get caught in these long conversations, whether it was about UFOs or whether it was about absolutely anything, but it would go on for hours. And so, but one day I happened to be in the office in Tiburon and the phone was ringing, and I don't know what made me answer it, but I picked it up. And it was a woman on the other end saying that she had been trying, was it for a year, 2 years? I don't remember. My mother will answer that part. But that she was trying, that she had really been working on translating the course into Spanish, and it was a calling for her. And when she called the foundation first, she reached someone who was Bob Scutch, who didn't want to let her through the gates. And I did not do this very much at all, but I felt it was important that she talked to my mother and connected them. That for me, that was an example of being thrown into a situation at a turning point that I knew nothing about. So you can explain what that history was.
Well, the Spanish became the very first language that we translated and worked on, and then also the first revision. But I thought what Tam was referring to, and it's interesting that I actually forgot that, although it's absolutely accurate. I was concentrating on something that happened when Rosa Maria, who died just a couple of years ago, and we were having a very difficult time. There was a specialness that needed to be corrected, and it was very painful, and we were really working on it. And she was coming one day to speak with me, and I was really frightened because I didn't know that I could overcome this, and I felt it had to be overcome. And Tam said she would come and sit with me. And so Rosa Maria and Tam and I sat together and went through what was going on, brought up the past, tried to let go of some of the annoyances and the animosity even that was going on. And the whole time, Tam was holding Rosa Maria's hand, and Rosa Maria had her arm around Tam. And I knew the healing was going to be accomplished that day. So in that sense, Tam was my strong partner, a magnet for healing, and her presence and her love helped us overcome the difficulties we were going through, and we became dearer to each other than ever before. That's the story I was thinking of.
Well, I was just adding in to this that there were not, Helen did not want translations at all. And because of this one strange answering of the phone call, the translation program began into the 27, almost 28 language. And so it was like I was put in different moments of time, somewhere where there would be a turning point. Anyway, fast forward to about 7 years ago, I think, I was doing a meditation, and I was deep into, I've always meditated to listen to that voice and to connect with that voice inside. And I heard very clearly that my mother, my entire life, had supported everything that I'd ever done. She never asked me to be involved in the course. She just supported my own path and my own way. And I heard that her time on the planet was getting shorter, and that it was important and necessary for me to honor her and to honor what she had brought to the world through publishing the course. And so I called her up and I asked her if she would do the lessons with me, because I had never done them or read the course. And she almost dropped the phone. And I think it was January 1st. And I just wanted to really see and honor what she had brought to the world. And so we started to do the lessons together, which was really my favorite part of it, was just connecting with her. Wherever I was traveling in the world, we would connect in to do the lessons for about 1.5 years, I think. Is that what it took us?
At least maybe 2, yeah.
Yeah, we stretched it out because it was enjoyable. And after that, that was that. I continued on my merry way, and
But wait.
But wait, go ahead.
That may have been the 7th or the 8th or the 10th time that I had been studying the workbook. I don't even remember, maybe more. But doing that for 1.5 to 2 years with my daughter, because of who she was, not just my daughter, but what she was already and came in born with, and with my commitment to do it yet again, and well this time, the most extraordinary things were happening. And we devised an imaginary bucket list that I was holding and she was holding. And in the bucket list were our unhealed relationships. And as we kept going, more and more relationships were getting healed. It was bombastic the way this was happening. She kept saying, you better not get down to the bottom. You better not, because she thought I was going to evanesce when I had no more relationships that I saw in darkness. But this work that we did together was so profound that I think I didn't even really begin to, what we used to say from science fiction, grok the course until that experience. Now, does it matter who you study the course or the study alone? Of course not. It matters that you're listening to the direction. Tam listened and she heard, but it was a gift to me.
And for me, it was an incredible gift to get to see and really, really see the value of the course and its applied principles. And yet still, I did not choose it as my way. And if I started to read the text, I would fall asleep every time.
So did Helen.
It was so dense for me. And comparative religion major or not, I could not get through more than a sentence or two. And so fast forward a bit, my mother, the foundation was talking about succession. And, am I still on?
Yes.
Okay. And it became very obvious that Bob Rosenthal was the person to bring the Foundation for Inner Peace to the next evolution. And I was in great support of that. And to make a very long story short, we met right after he had accepted that would be his position. And he said to me very clearly, I have meditated, I have heard, and I'm not to do this alone. And I need to do this with a female partner. There was Helen and Bill, and there was your mother and Ken, and I need to do this with a female partner. And I thought, well, good luck, do it with your wife, whatever, great. And he said, no, I was told that I need to do this with you, that you know all the players in this situation, and this has been part of your life, and I need to do this with you. And I had great resistance. And I said, I haven't even fully read the course, and he said, but what is your life about? And I said, love and forgiveness. And he said, that's right. I've seen you practicing its principles your whole life. Forget the rebellion, that this is your mother's path. And I still push back, and he did the cruel thing of saying to me, ask. And so I closed my eyes and I asked, and I saw this mosaic of my life and the different places where I was set up and put into situations where the Course was deep in my world. And I heard very clearly that I was supposed to do this and to help. And all I could hear was the words as I received the information was gotcha. And I then had to make a deal. I made a deal with Holy Spirit that I would serve this Course, and I would have, but only if it was as myself and not my mother. And I heard, of course, and also that it had to be fun, or I wasn't going to be interested in this. And it was, of course. And so I accepted this position, very, very clear that I was serving the Course, but this still was not necessarily my practice or my way. And within the serving of the Course, a year ago on May 29th, I had another deep meditation. And in this meditation, I was told something new, because whenever I meditated, I would get information about how to help people. And it was the way in which the intuitive would come through meditation. And in this particular meditation, I was told it is time to stop being the seer and time to start being the beer of love, to be love instead of to see story around love. And even that is a longer story that I won't go into at this moment, but I said, okay, I want that. I want to be this presence of love without all the thinking about it or the telling people what help they needed to experience love. And each time I said yes to this, it would get bigger of, oh my gosh, this person, I can help this person. And I realized how incredibly undisciplined I was. And so I asked internally, I said, I can't believe all these years of meditation, thought I was doing it well. And now to be that experience, I'm not doing it so well. How can I be disciplined to experience this and not just go into seeing? And I heard the question, are you committed to this? And I knew with my entire being that I was committed to this for the rest of my life. And I said, absolutely, yes, I am committed to this, that which I hear I'm being asked to do as well. And I heard very clearly, well, we have something for you. I don't know why I heard we. I don't usually hear we, but I heard we have something for you to help you with this discipline. It's called A Course in Miracles. Do the workbook lessons this time for yourself, not to honor your mother. It's time it will help with this discipline. And I felt another gotcha experience. And, the joke was on me completely, but I agreed to do it. And that's when I began to really get into doing the lessons and take this on. And when I told my mother about this the next day, she had a very anticipated over emotional reaction about it and was a little weepy. And I was trying to pull her back from the weepy part. And she said, no, you don't understand. Yesterday, which was the day that this happened for me, was the 43rd anniversary of the day that Helen and Bill handed me the manuscript. And I knew that I was committed to this for the rest of my life. And so I kind of begrudgingly laughed, saying even my own commitment to doing the course was seemed to be a part of legacy and a bigger plan that I knew. But since that commitment stepped into me and I stepped into it, I think it's brought an even deeper path on this path, with understanding how my mother has been doing this as well, and in the partnering of it. So, okay, go ahead.
And every Wednesday when we meet together with our executive board,
oh yeah,
Tam and the rest of us read from the text.
It's not our whole executive board. It's just you, me, and Bob. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, Bob sketches there by feeling.
And Ginger.
Every Wednesday we study the course together, and Tam was certainly participating in that too. And if you asked me whether I ever thought I would live long enough to see this or would it ever happen, I would have said a profound no, and I don't care. So I guess my not caring or wanting anything from it also was a lesson for me. And at that point, I think we better get some more people here to talk.
I just want to add one last thing there, which is that I looked on my mother's calendar one day and saw that she called our Wednesday groups where we're reading through the text, the entire text. And I'm actually enjoying it. We're awake, we're reading it out loud, it's great. But I saw that my mother had an SLG. It's our SLG group. And I said, what does that mean? And why don't you say what SLG is?
Of course, it's Slow Learners Group. 44 years and still going. We thank you tremendously for being with us and sharing the time that we're sharing together. We had no idea what we were going to talk about. I followed Tam's direction. It's just a free-for-all. And we hope that there was something that we gave you that was helpful to you. But more than that, we got something ourselves because we sure do love each other.
That